Hello everyone, this is Direwolf20 and welcome to a brand new mod spotlight, this time taking a look at Actually Additions. We are taking a look today at Actually Additions because it is a mod that I've recently added to my mod pack for 1.10. It's got a bunch of cool stuff. It's definitely a technical mod. Has some blocks that generate use RF. It has some items that use RF, some items that don't though. And we're going to go through pretty much all the items and stuff that you can see in this mod. As you can tell, it does come with a manual. Most of you will see edition 71 listed here. I'm currently using version 71. Mine says edition 20 because that's a little Easter egg for Direwolf20. Thanks, Alpec. You rock, dude. So, let's get started taking a look. The first thing we're going to look at is the manual and how to use it, because obviously that's probably pretty much common sense. But then we're going to go through the mod and take a look at all the cool items and stuff that it adds. So let's get started taking a look at Actually Additions. So as you can see, one of the options as soon as you open the book is that it tells you to click this little button to automatically add some bookmarks to the bottom. So at the bottom of the screen here, we've got a bunch of bookmarks. You can open up a page to bookmark it, and then you can shift click down here to remove it. So let's click the bookmark page, and we'll see that it automatically adds some. A lot of this is covered in the Getting Started section, so if you skip that step, it's no big deal. You can click on your intro to the manual, page 1, and you can flip through, and you can see we can go through different pages, and it talks about the manual and all the cool stuff in there. And then shift click to remove your bookmark. There's also a video guide and some information about some black quartz that we're going to be talking about and other stuff. So I'm going to be covering a lot of this. So let's go ahead and remove all these bookmarks so that you guys can get the full experience from checking out the mod. So using the book is pretty easy, right? Turning the pages left and right over here, and then up here goes back, or right click, hold shift for main pages. Neat. So we can go all the way back to the main page here, getting started, and flip through some of these pages. Let's see how to get started using Actually Additions. One of the first items you're going to want to make for yourself is the Atomic Reconstructor. It's going to allow you to create some of the crafting ingredients that you're going to need for Actually Additions. One of the items you need to use here is iron casing, which you will need black quartz for. Black quartz is found in the world. Basically, it comes from these black quartz ore blocks. You can smelt them in a furnace to get one, or you can use some kind of grinding mechanic to get two. Cool. Once you've got your Atomic Reconstructor placed in the world, you'll notice that there's a bunch of stuff showing up on your UI, which only appears when you mouse over it. This is true for several of the items inside Actually Additions. This particular block has no UI, so it's pretty useful to have all the information shown right here. You'll also notice in the bottom left a little reference to how much RF is available. We're going to have to give this guy some power. Pick your favorite RF generation mod, but if you don't have one, you can go ahead and use the generator from Actually Additions. There is a coal generator that is pretty straightforward. All you have to do is throw some coal in there or any other form of smeltable material and it'll start cooking up. Nice. This works according to the book, which you can shift left click on here or shift right click. It says it uses or it generates 30 RF a tick. Cool. Not bad. We'll notice that all of a sudden the Atomic Reconstructor is firing a laser. What's that all about? Well, that's the crafting mechanic. You may, however, not want to have this happen automatically. So the best way to handle this is to get yourself a redstone torch and right click on the Atomic Reconstructor. Boom. Now it's toggled to pulse mode. It'll only fire the laser when it receives a redstone pulse, as opposed to deactivation mode, which means a redstone signal deactivates the laser. Cool. So let's put it on pulse mode so that it's not endlessly firing and get ourselves a button so we can fire it when we wish. According to the book, every time it fires the laser, it's going to go ahead and use about 1,000 RF in total. How do we make this thing craft for us? Well, it's really easy. All we have to do is place a block in front of it. Now, anytime the laser that's fired by the Atomic Reconstructor impacts this block, any items nearby will automatically be converted into their respective crafting items. So let's take a look at some of those. So you can place down blocks. So blocks of redstone will turn into redstonia crystal blocks. Blocks of lapis will turn into Pallas crystal blocks. Cool. And there's several other versions. Diamonds, coal, iron, all have similar ones. But you can do it on the individual item level as well. So just throw the items on the ground and have it impact that cobblestone. So we could throw redstone or lapis down. For example, let's throw redstone. If we just toss a single piece of redstone and fire the laser, poof, you'll notice the little white particle effects that indicate the area of effect of the laser and where it hit. And if you throw multiple items down, it'll automatically convert multiple items. Awesome. You can also place blocks in the world if you want, if you're doing block-based. And when it impacts the block and any items nearby, it will convert that as well. Sweet. Very cool. Many of the items that you're going to be making going forward in Actually Additions are going to require some form of crystal or anything else made by the atomic reconstructor, so it's definitely something you're going to need to get early on. And obviously powering it early on is going to be necessary with either the coal generator or some other kind of RF generation technique. It also should be noted that this can be automated fully within Actually Additions. Some of the items we're going to see in a little bit are going to show you how you might automate this block. One other thing to note is that Actually Additions also supports the Tesla API, so if you're using any Tesla-based mods, you can simply click on here to convert from Tesla to RF. Sweet. There's a second tier of crafting called the Empower, which I'm going to demonstrate to you guys now. It's pretty straightforward to set up. Basically, you're going to need a block called the Empower, and then you're going to need 4 blocks called display stands. Let's go ahead and get them set up. So the Empower and the display stands. You place the Empower in the world, and the display stands are placed 2 blocks away from the Empower on all 4 sides. Display stands will need power. You'll find that there's many items that can be empowered, and if you look inside the Actually Additions manual, you'll notice that it tells you how this works and how to set it up. But basically, you place an item in the center and 4 items around it to get the empowered version of that item. So let's take some of those redstonia crystals that we made a moment ago and empower them. We're going to need nether brick, redstone, rose red, and bricks. All you have to do now is place items on the display stands. So we'll place our redstonia crystal in the center, and then our different items all around the sides. And you'll see the infusion process begins, and we get the crafted item out of it. Nice! So those are the 2 main crafting mechanics in Actually Additions. There's a few other minor ones, but most of the things you're going to need are going to be in here. You'll also notice that there's JEI integration, so if you flip through JEI, you'll see the atomic reconstructor recipe here has redstone to redstonia crystal. And you can also click here to see more information. So this book has a nice little JEI integration, so you can go right to that chapter within the book. And then again, if you wanted to look up the recipe of the Empower, you'll see here that it shows the empowered recipe. So redstonia crystal, nether brick, redstone, rose red. And you can also, as it shows you here, use floral red powder if you have Botania installed. And again, click to see more information. And then there's also a little tab here that talks about the Actually Additions manual, and it says what the Empower is and how it works. And again, you can click here to jump to it. Nice. Inside the Empower section are all the recipes that you might find. Cool. Pretty good. While we're talking about the atomic reconstructor, we should probably talk about the lens system. You can add lenses to this atomic reconstructor that have different abilities. Let's look at a few of them. There's also a few additional recipes here. So for example, you can turn sand into soul sand and rotten flesh into leather. These do cost a significant amount of RF. You can see this in JEI's integration. So you'll notice that the atomic reconstructor from sand to soul sand costs 20,000 RF in addition to the 1,000 that's required to fire the laser. The same is true of the redstonia crystal. So for example, the redstonia crystal, we can see here that it costs 40 RF, in addition to the 1,000 that is to fire the system. So keep in mind there's a little bit of RF cost for some things. Neat. Prismarine shards are craftable with this, as we can see. And if we look at the RF cost of that, it's 30,000 RF. So pretty expensive to convert with some of the additional recipes that you see here, but definitely useful if you need to get these items. Let's take a look at the lenses now. There's an intro to lenses section that talks about how they work. Basically, you right-click the lens after you craft it, and to remove them, right-click with an empty hand. They all use different amounts of power to activate as well and have different features. Let's take a look at them. To craft each of these lenses, you simply make yourself a basic lens, and then atomic reconstruct it. So if we fire the laser, we get the first lens, which is the lens of color, which I've already got in my inventory here. Place it down and let's see what it does. The lens of color will change the color of things. It's pretty straightforward. You'll notice here that it works on stained glass, panes, stained carpet, stained clay, dye, lamps, wool, pretty much anything. When we fire it, boom, it'll fire and hit the item and change its color. Nice, and it'll cycle through all the colors. Pretty cool. You'll also notice that contrary to previous items, when the lens of color is on here, it goes through blocks that it changes, even through blocks that it can't change, unlike the previous lens or the one without a lens, where you'll notice that it stops when it hits the block. Cool. Simply hit that lens of color to get the next lens type. Cool. This is the lens of detonation. As you can see here, it pretty much creates a detonation, an explosion, around the block the laser hits. Be careful with this, seriously. With the lens, the laser also goes 3 times as far. So let's bump this out a little bit further. We don't want too many explosions too close to our setup. My goodness. You weren't kidding about being careful. The next lens is the lens of certain death. I don't know if I want to use this one. It kills whatever's in front of it. Let's choose a spider to sacrifice for experimentation purposes. Test subject 1, fire. See you later, buddy. Nice. It also goes pretty far, as you noticed, and it will also kill a player, maybe even in a single hit. So be careful with that one. Lens of the Killer is an upgraded version. You're going to need sharpness 5 and a diamond sword in addition to your Lens of Certain Death. And basically what this does is it makes it so that the mobs will also drop experience and player kill only loot. Those of you who've played a lot of modded Minecraft may know that there's some items that only players can kill to get those items when the mob dies. So by enabling this, you make sure that you get those items. Cool. Let's say you've got a really cool enchanted sword, and you want to get that enchant off that sword and put it on a book. For that, you might want to make the Lens of Disenchanting. It's pretty straightforward. Make sure that a blank book and the sword are in the same block space next to each other, and fire the Lens of Disenchanting. Note, however, that this is going to require about 250,000 RF. So it's not going to work if you don't have that 250,000 RF stored inside your atomic reconstructor. Let's speed things up a little bit. Nice! What it does is take the topmost enchant off the sword, so the first one listed, and puts it on the book. You can do this subsequently to other things as well. Notice in the book chapter here, it tells you more information. The recipe is going to require some empowered diamantine crystals, which are pretty expensive, so keep that in mind. Finally, we have the Lens of the Miner. Pretty expensive lens, not too crazy, requires 60,000 RF per operation, and what it'll do, it will convert stone into a random type of ore from the overworld. Neat. So any and all stone that it runs into will get converted. 60,000 RF per operation, and it's totally random every time it fires. And it doesn't do an area of effect like the other lens. It's whatever it hits, as you can see there. Cool. It also works for netherrack. So if you threw some netherrack in front of this thing, it might convert it into that type of ore. Sweet. It can also make ardite and cobalt and other things as well. Pretty awesome. It mentions in the book there might be additional power required depending on the rarity of the ore that's generated. So if you get something that's really rare, like diamond or maybe even ardite, it might cost more than that 60,000 RF. So keep that in mind. So those are the different lenses that are available for the atomic reconstructor. We've just covered only like 1 or 2 blocks, and there's a lot more to take a look at. I think the next thing we might want to look at is the laser transport system, because that's next in the book. So relays are basically wireless transport systems meant to be used over short ranges. They're not meant to be used over long ranges. They have a block limitation of 15 blocks. Let's take a look at each of the 3 types as is. First, there's the intro to laser relays, which I recommend you take a look at because it tells you how they work, and it tells you how to use this laser relay, and it also gives you that information about the 15 block distance the limitation is. We'll take a look first at energy laser relays. What these basically can do is transfer energy from one block to another. So I've got here a atomic reconstructor, which you can see on the tooltip, 0 out of 30,000 RF. Over here, we've got the coal generator. Let's place an energy laser relay on top of this one and one on top of this one. This will allow us to wirelessly transfer RF from the coal generator over to the atomic reconstructor. To do this, simply right-click on the one laser relay and right-click on the next. And now we have a laser. Fancy! And we can see the RF building up there. And this thing's starting to fire because he's still in disabled mode. There, we'll put it back on a pulse. Sweet. So that's how the energy laser relay works. If you shift right click the laser wrench in your hand, you can see a couple different options. Energy laser relays come in 3 tiers. The first one, which can transfer 1,000 per second. The next one is 10,000, and the most extreme is 100,000 RF per tick. So keep that in mind. If you're going to be doing something with a lot of power cost, you might need the top tier one. This one's just fine for now because we're only generating 30 RF a tick, and this thing can transfer 1,000. Pretty cool, right? And you can have multiple lasers part of multiple systems. So, for example, if we had other things that needed to accept power, like, let's say, an alloy smeltery from Ender.io. Just place that anywhere in the world and pop your energy laser relay on it. And it doesn't matter which relay you connect. If you connect this one, it should be fine. Sweet. And we can see it's getting power. Very cool. It should be noted that this form of energy transfer does not come for free. There is a small amount of energy lost, while it's transferring. And again, the range limit is 15 blocks, so this won't be infinite. You can't be sending this all the way across the world. However, blocks do not get in the way of the lasers. They can transmit through blocks without any issues. And obviously, to break the connection between lasers, simply break one of the lasers. Seems pretty obvious. Understanding how the energy network works should make it pretty obvious how the fluid laser relays work. They do the exact same thing. They can transfer fluids. We're going to configure this guy to push energy, or air fluids, and we will set this one to accept it, and we'll throw some water in there, let's say. Seems pretty straightforward. Right-click to link them, and they'll start transferring the liquids over. There is no limit to how much this can transfer. It's limited by the block itself. So in this case, the fluid tanks from Ender.io are limiting the fluid transfer rate. In addition to the energy and fluid system, which are pretty easy to understand, the item storage system is more complex and allows for some really cool item transfer mechanics. Let's take a look at how it all works. Basically, first you're going to need to get yourself item laser relays, which are pretty straightforward. They go on top of chests or any other inventories that you want to interact with. In this case, I placed 3 item laser relays on top of 3 separate iron chests. Now, the other block you're going to want to get for this system is an item interface. This guy can go be placed in the world, and you want an item laser relay on him as well. This interface can now interact after we connect all these things to all 3 chests, and it can input and output from all 3 of them. So let's take a look. If I were to, for example, get a hopper and place it on the item interface, this interface can access all 3 chests. So any items that go into the hopper are going to wind up landing in one of the 3 chests. Cool. This helps to expand your systems. So an example for this might be is if this chest were full and we wanted to place some new item in here, it would wind up going into the next chest. Awesome. This can also work in the opposite direction. For example, we can place a hopper on the bottom of this item interface, and it'll pull the items out of the network. So basically what these item laser relays will do is create a network of inventories that are all interconnected. You can treat these 3 iron chests as one giant inventory, if you wish, and this item interface is the gateway to that giant inventory. You can pull items out of these 3 chests and put items into these 3 chests using this item laser relay. Pretty cool. And you'll notice that the diamond chest is being filled up with all the items from all 3 chests. Pretty awesome. And if any items go in here, for example this diamond shovel, it'll immediately be pulled out and dropped into this chest. The power of this system becomes much more apparent when you start using advanced item laser relays, which allow for whitelisting and blacklisting items. So for example, let's set up an item laser relay here, a normal one, that links to 2 advanced ones. Fancy. Now we can sneak right-click on an UI and we can see what's allowed. On the left side of the UI here, we can see information about what's allowed to go into the system, meaning inbound from the interface to the storage system. Okay. Outbound is if we were hoppering out of it. So, for example, a hopper underneath the item interface. Okay. There are 3 or 4 different options: whitelist versus blacklist, respecting or ignoring metadata, respecting or ignoring NBT, and respecting or ignoring the OR dictionary. But there's 2 different ones of these. Soft respecting the OR dictionary, as we can see here, the item being passed only has to contain only one of the OR dictionary tags in the item filter. Or hard respecting, meaning if they all. So if there's multiple OR dictionary tags on the filter, that might be a little complex to understand, but you'll probably understand it when you start using it. But by default, we can tell it to ignore the dictionary, or probably soft is what most of you will use. Cool? And then you can specify down here smart whitelist. When pressing this, all items from inventories adjacent to this relay will be added to the whitelist. We'll check that out in a minute. For now, let's throw cobblestone into the whitelist for inbound. And over here, we'll throw torches into the whitelist for inbound. And over here, we're going to put a basic item laser relay. One of the rules of the relay system is that when you're transferring items from one inventory to another using this, advanced item relays will always be considered first, with regular item relays being considered last. So this will wind up probably being like a default chest. So let's see what happens. I'm going to go ahead and set up the hopper again on the item interface relay and drop some cobblestone in there. We'll do 16 of them. And we'll also throw some torches in there. And then finally, we'll throw some dirt in there. What we should see is proper sorting. Items of cobblestone matching the filter go into this chest. Items matching this filter, aka torches, go into this chest, and then items that don't match any filters wind up in this chest. Neat. Now let's talk about filtering on the export. So let's say that we wanted to add to this setup here that iron chests are also allowed to go into this chest. And we're also going to whitelist them on the outbound, meaning you're allowed to export from this chest. If we tried to export from the entire system, what should happen is we should only be allowed to export iron chests from here once they're in there, or the dirt, because there is no outbound filter on this. The outbound filter on this relay is a whitelist that's empty, meaning nothing's allowed to be extracted from it. Let's see if this is correct. When we extract, we should be getting the iron chests and the dirt only. The torches are not allowed out, nor are the cobblestone, because we don't have cobblestone in this whitelist, and we don't have cobblestone or torches in this whitelist. Nice. If we change this to be an empty blacklist, it would allow the torches out, and pretty much let everything out unless we added them to the blacklist. And this, of course, can be done on both sides. So if we set the settings over here on this laser relay, it would totally work. Let's try it. So I've gone ahead and made some changes. What we've got here is that an empty blacklist, meaning anything is allowed to be extracted from this chest. Over here, we've got an empty blacklist for outbound as well, meaning anything is allowed to be extracted from this chest. And this is just a regular item laser relay, so there is no filtering on what's allowed to be extracted. However, on the advanced laser relay here, we've got a whitelist that's currently empty for the outbound, which means nothing is allowed to come out of here. Okay, let's put 4 iron chests in there and add iron chest to the whitelist. What we should see quickly is the iron chests were pulled out of here and placed in here. So we were able to filter on this side of the equation which items are allowed to go out of the item interface into the chest. This is an extremely powerful system when you start thinking about it. As we mentioned earlier, there's a button down here for Smart Whitelist. What that'll do is populate the whitelist with the items that are already in the chest. Actually Additions also has an item filter. Neat. What this thing does, according to the manual, can be used in the advanced item laser relays as well as a few other blocks we haven't talked about yet. This thing, when we shift right click, has more filtering slots available to it. And if we wanted to, we could open this UI up, and instead of placing it in the UI directly, we could place it in the item filter. Neat. Now, when we place the item filter in here, it should know which items are allowed to be filtered into it. Awesome. So this gives you more filtering options, super powerful. So this could be a really nice system for building a sorting system. And it's kind of wireless, which is neat. What we should see now is cobblestone should filter into here, because we've got this item filter sitting right here with cobblestone in the list. Nice. And if you have an empty item filter in here, so for example, if we had an empty item filter and then we did the smart whitelist, it'll populate the item filter with the whitelist items that are already in the chest. How cool is that? So having multiple item filters in here allows for literally a ton of item filtering options. Like, what do we got? We got a dozen slots in here for each item filter. Nice. However, you should note that item filters inside item filters, even though they look like they'll work, do not. So do not think that this item filter is going to filter on cobblestone, creative capacitor, and item interface. That sub-filtering like that doesn't work. So what kind of cool stuff when we do a system? Pretty much anything that any other item sorting system can do. Let's say, for example, that we wanted to smelt all our ores in a furnace that we get. Simply go in here and we'll add to the whitelist iron ore. Okay, now iron ore is going to be the only thing that's going to be a whitelistable outbound from the storage network to an item interface connected to this advanced relay. Remember, this is the outbound side. Any items leaving the network through an item interface are outbound. Okay, now what we could do is pretty much any iron ore that's in the system should wind up getting hoppered directly into this system. Cool. All we need to do is link the lasers. And now the iron ore went into that slot. Sweet. So assuming that we had all these things linked, any ore in our system would be pretty much exported into the furnace, provided there's room, of course. One more note that you really don't want to forget is you can totally have more than one item interface on the same network, doing multiple different things. So, whether it's the advanced or the regular item laser relay, you shouldn't have a problem getting everybody talking. So basically, these are all one giant system. You can have multiple item interfaces, multiple inventories, and even multiple furnaces. We wouldn't even have to do the hopper directly into the furnace here. If we wanted to, we could have an item interface and an item relay on the hopper, on the furnace itself. Like, there's multiple ways to go about doing what we're doing here, and it's really pretty cool. So really, if we wanted to, we could just do this, and then we could hopper into the item interface, and it would go directly into the furnace based on the whitelist of items that are allowed in there. Item interfaces are always outputs, and any other inventory is pretty much always an input. Super cool. While we're on this topic, it might do well to talk about some of the other advanced things you can do with item routing using actually additions. One of them is one thing called an item distributor. Cool. Basically, it will automatically distribute to adjacent inventories when items are hoppered into it, and it'll try to balance them. So for example, let's do this. Okay, and then place a diamond chest on top. If we place iron ore in here, it's going to quickly pull out all the iron ore, and it will evenly distribute it to the chests on all sides. 15, 16, 15, and 16. Awesome. And the same with cobblestone. So you don't have to hopper into it. It'll basically pull items out of the inventory on top and evenly distribute them to the sides. Awesome. This can, of course, be integrated with this system, and it can go directly into an item interface that routes into different inventories. Another one is the ESD, which stands for Extra Util Stealing Device, or Expelling Sugar Dagger, or any variant of other ESD stand fors. Basically, it's a block that allows you to super configure the routing of items from this block to other blocks. Let's take a look. So think of the ESD, the extra long solidifying disassociation, is pretty much like a hopper. So let's say that we wanted to create a hopper system that was very much like this, okay? That's easy. All we do is open up the interface and we specify which directions are inbound and which directions are outbound. So this face is the north face. So what we would say is inbound is up and outbound is north. Cool, that seems easy enough. And you might have also noticed that it automatically updated some slot numbers here. What's that all about? I'll show you in a minute. But just note that if, for example, we had a diamond chest here, those slot numbers would be different. For now, this is working exactly like a hopper. We throw items in there, and they go in here. Pretty straightforward. Unlike a hopper, it transfers a full stack at a time. And like a hopper, it stops with a redstone signal. Neat. Turn off the redstone signal, and the items flow. The inventory slot here is not a filter. It is an item temporary buffer slot. So basically, any items that are in there get routed to the next inventory. It doesn't act as a filter. So if it didn't have any room for it to send the items, then anything that goes in here would get into that slot, and it would wait for a position for it to send stuff. Got it? So it's kind of like the inventory slots inside the item hopper. It's a buffer. You can also specify which inventory slots you're allowed to manipulate. For example, on the north side, maybe we didn't want this to access the entire inventory. Maybe we only wanted to access slot 100 through 108. Check. Now, when items route into here, they're only going to be able to route into slots 100 through 108. Neat. And any further items won't get routed. You can do the same for the outbound inventory. So for example, only items in slots 1 through 5 can be outbound routed. So the first slot, which is 0, nothing moves. Slot 1, things get pulled out of. And then they land in slot 100. Pretty spiffy. Did you say you want whitelists? Then you want the advanced ESD. Pretty much the exact same functionality, except with the same whitelist function we're familiar with from over here. Okay, so you've got your inbound and outbound whitelists, blacklists, metadata, NBT, or dictionary, and of course using the same filtering system that we saw. And just like the regular ESD, we specify which directions to outbound and inbound, and we can also specify slot numbers. Fancy. And guys, that feels like a good wrapping up part for part 1 of Actually Addition's Mod Spotlight. Let's see how far we got into the book. We got into the starting section, reconstruction, and laser transport. What do we have left? Blocks that don't use RF. Blocks that do use RF. Blocks that generate RF. Items that don't use RF. Items that do use RF. Miscellaneous. There's pretty much a giant amount of stuff we have to cover. This will probably be a 3-part spotlight, would be my guess at this point. For now, Daryl20 signing off. Hope you guys are looking forward to part 2. We'll start going down the books list here, and we'll probably cover the blocks in part 2. And then maybe we'll get to the items in part 3. We'll see what happens, though. For now, Direwolf20 signing off. Take it easy.